On this sunny day, the wait outside Dongan High School dragged on very slowly. Two men in brown suits with badges were talking, and the shorter one with glasses told his smiling companion that he had finished quickly and then just sat there and got bored. Some noise attracted both of their attention. Bulky armored vehicles drove down the street and people were sitting in their backs. They were young guys in expensive suits. The young girls who watched them admired these young men out loud. "These aren't even hunters," one of the men in brown said to another, "but simply students from a specialized school." The second guy dismissively suggested that his interlocutor pay attention to the logo, which belonged to the School of Heroes. Many years ago, it all started suddenly, without any warning, and people on the street looked at the crimson sky in horror. Many winged dragons descended to Earth. The monsters were larger than skyscrapers, and they penetrated human cities, scattering sparks of flame around them. The people of the cities looked at the monsters, but did not even try to run away. According to scientific facts that were discovered later, there was a world similar to Earth in outer space. But because of the disaster that happened there, that entire world fell apart. The flaming debris fell to Earth and began to merge with the environment all over the planet. The phenomenon was called the merger, as the laws of nature of another world began to operate on Earth, and monsters appeared. The Earth changed, and monsters took control of approximately 17% of the Earth's surface. These territories were called the dungeons. A young man in military uniform and body armor watched as monsters killed people. A creature, only partly resembling a human but much larger, grabbed its victim by the head. This monster was called the Horned Horror. The stronger the creature, the more horns it had. The monster looked at the city engulfed in flames. A guy in a military uniform hid from him behind a ledge of the wall. With a furious growl, the monster rushed towards him, sensing his presence. The guy took a machine gun and started shooting at the approaching enemy. The monster ran very fast, and its eyes glowed brightly. He hit the man, and the blow was so strong that blood came out of the victim's mouth. The next blow threw him back several steps. The man crashed into the wall and made a hole in it. The monster stood above him, and even his outstanding human abilities were not enough to resist these unknown guests. The monster bent over its victim and let out a growl. But fortunately, the invasion from another world brought with it more than just cataclysms, and the just helpless guy suddenly rose up and attacked the enemy with unexpected power. The innate limitations of humans and the limitations of potential inherent in the nature of the Earth no longer worked. The glow enveloped the man's figure, and now he had enough strength to hold the Horned Horror's fist with his own bare hand. The monster did not give up, and the fight continued. People changed and began to possess abilities that were previously inaccessible to them, as if they had thrown off the chains that had always bound them. A man could grab a monster several times larger than himself and throw it to the ground. The guy in military uniform used the ability that suddenly appeared in him to destroy the enemy. It was a victory, but the victor did not immediately realize it when looking at the defeated enemy. He looked in amazement at his own hands, enveloped in the glow of new power. All Earthlings developed abilities, but each had their own skill, and those who stood out from the rest learned to use their full potential through training. A black sun rose over the ruined cities, and armies of monsters advanced on human territory. Now the people had something to oppose them with. They formed elite troops. Those who returned the dungeon zone to the people became known as hunters. Hunters fought monsters, dedicating their entire lives to this. The age of dungeons and hunters has arrived on Earth. People began to defeat the enemy, which had previously seemed too powerful. The whole world shook from their achievements and power. Even before the end of a single generation, schools were founded in which future hunters were educated. The best school for teenagers, and also an educational institution that had been producing successful hunters for 25 years, was Hero High School. Young people all over the world were eager to get into it. On a clear sunny day, people in the city, which had not been destroyed, were discussing the students of the School of Heroes taking the exam in the dungeon. One man asked another what would happen if they died inside, but the second replied that they should be confident in their abilities if they were able to get in. Joyful shouts again attracted the attention of the interlocutors. The group of girls continued to noisily admire, noticing some particularly attractive young man. It was a fair-haired half-elf boy. The girls said it was on a completely different level. One of the guys watching them asked who it was, and the second one replied that the half-elf was often shown on TV. His name was Choi Diav. His father was a famous hunter, his mother was an elf, and he himself was predicted to have a career as a hunter in the top 5 within 5 years of graduating from high school. Diao was now 17 years old and a first-year student at the School of Heroes, having made 14 trips to the dungeons. The observer was surprised that the girls admired this young man so much, because he was not some kind of superstar. His interlocutor called him Cha Ryung and remembered that he had a part-time job today, adding that Lee Yun-jin invited her friends to karaoke. Cha Ryung looked at his phone screen and wished his friends to have fun without him. The friend suggested that Cha Ryung could skip his errands today because the exams were over, but the other person hit him, causing him to fall. Cha Ryung said that they would see each other next week and headed away. One of the remaining guys told the one lying on the ground to think first and then speak. Everyone knew that Cha Ryan had a special situation. He was caring for a seriously ill loved one. At this time, Cha Ryung was walking down the street, reading notifications on his phone, one saying that he had not paid his hospital bills for 2 months, the second saying that an order had come in and he needed to come to work. Choi Diav, with his eyes closed in satisfaction, waved his hand to the girls greeting him. His attention was drawn to the silhouette of Cha Ryan, walking away down the street. Choi Diav's friend asked what had happened, what had upset him about that guy, but Choi Diav replied that he had just imagined something. Cha Ryung thought that he really didn't want to work today. He went down into the underground passage and crawled under the striped tape prohibiting passage. Cha Ryung heard, "Say hello to our customer." 3 people were waiting for Cha Ryuna in the underpass, broker MJ Hwan, and 2 strangers, one short and bald, the other huge and heavily muscled. Cha Ryung started to say words of greeting, but he was rudely interrupted. The bald man furiously accused MJ Hwan of mocking him. He needed the most capable person, but the broker objected that he had invited the most capable person. The bald man loomed over MJ Hwan menacingly and called him a monster, and also said that he did not come here to do charity work. He ordered to remove Cha from here Ryan and bring a normal man. Cha Ryung watched the squabble. The bald man promised that if his demands were not met, he would disable both of his interlocutors right there. Cha Ryung intervened and asked the second stranger, the broad-shouldered one, if he was the hunter. But he quickly figured out that the broad-shouldered one used to be a hunter, but now he is no longer one, and works for the bald one, whom Cha Ryung called unfinished. The bald man stopped making a fuss and asked what the freak said. Broad-shouldered replied that he saw no point in talking, he simply needed to break this insolent man's legs and arms, and he himself would understand where he had gone wrong. MJ Hwan continued to smoke silently, while the strangers tried to force Cha Ryona apologized, threatening violence and calling him various names. Cha Ryung replied that he didn't know how to do that. He rolled up the sleeves of his jacket, and a bluish glow formed around his figure. What is dungeon smuggling in simple terms? The hunter's job is to clear the dungeons of any dangerous creatures that might be encountered there. If they successfully destroy the monsters, they receive a large reward. But before these treasures are brought out into the open, they need to be checked. After all, among them there are treasures that possess enormous power. If they are left outside without proper permission, they could be used for dangerous purposes. Therefore, such treasures must be checked and registered by the Hunters Association. They are also subject to a corresponding tax. There are those who break this rule. They make an agreement with the hunters, who do not want to pay high taxes. These criminals are secretly carrying out the treasures of the dungeons. If they are not caught, chaos may reign in society. The advertisement calling for such offenders to be reported to the Hunters Association was known to everyone in the world. Jai Hwan took out another cigarette from the pack. The bald man looked questioningly at the broker. He asked if he really would not interfere. Cha Ryung and his opponent, the tall, broad-shouldered Lee Pil-gyu, stood facing each other, ready to begin the fight. MJ Hwan asked the bald man if he was scared now, but the customer objected that he was not the one who should be scared, since his fighter was very irritable. Lee Pil-gyu quit the hunters not because of an injury, but because of a beating from a colleague, and now his bosses have had to clean up corpses more than once. Cha Ryung said that beating up a colleague is serious, and Lee Pil-gyu is the real culprit, but not Cha Ren says such things about others. Lee Pil-gyu replied that he killed the pathetic person who was bothering him. It was like getting rid of trash. Cha Ryung looked at his opponent thoughtfully. Then the guy suddenly smiled and said that now he would know what it meant to get rid of trash. Charyung suggested that Lee Pil-gyu had committed the crime on purpose to get his license revoked, and Im Jae-hwan chuckled, thinking that the guy was truly crazy. Lee Pil-gyu's fist almost hit Cha Ryan in the face as he continued to speak mockingly. It was a blow of incredible force, capable of taking off a head in one go. He didn't even touch Cha Ryan, and he said that his opponent doesn't know how to attack. Lee Pil-gyu instantly became furious, but Charyung remained calm. He said he would also give a light blow. Charyung swung his arm and kicked Lee Pil-gyu in the base of the neck. Cha's face, Ryan's expression remained mocking, while his opponent rolled his eyes in pain. The bald customer looked at what was happening in shock, but Im Jae-hwan said that he warned that he would bring the most capable guy. Charyung retreated from the enemy, a glow of energy emanating from him. He said that looking at Lee Pil-gyu's appearance, he thought he would be tougher. Lee Pil-gyu didn't understand what had happened, because there was a skinny youth standing in front of him. But the boy's reflexes and the force of the blow that Pil-gyu missed impressed the former hunter. They pointed out that Lee Pil-gyu was facing a true professional. Im Jae-hwan told the customer that he had finally begun to understand something, and that Charyung was not someone who could be easily defeated in a fight. "He fights well," said the bald man, "but there was a time when Pil-gyu could do a lot." Im Jae-hwan replied that he had a rough idea of what it was like before. In the past, Lee Pil-gyu was one of those people called tanks. In response to the customer's surprised look, Im Jae-hwan explained that he had good intuition. Lee Pil-gyu told his opponent that he might know a few tricks, but that didn't stop him from being just some smuggler. Energy flowed from Lee Pil-gyu's body, reminiscent of electricity. After the merger, humans acquired skills that went beyond their boundaries. People have different shapes and abilities, so these skills also differ. The same applies to hunters. They are trained according to their talent, and each one plays his own role. Charyung looked at Lee Pil-gyu in amazement. Among the hunters there were so-called tanks, a specialization that protects team members from the dangers of the dungeon. They walked ahead, facing the monsters firsthand. Their bodies were so trained that bullets were not a threat to them. The best of the tanks were not afraid even of hits from rockets of any power. Charyung watched his opponent's transformation and recognized him as Tank. He entered the battle and attacked Lee Pil-gyu. The customer was shocked and speechless as he watched this fight. He tripped and almost fell, but Im Jae-hwan caught him. Im Jae-hwan muttered that what was happening was just hooliganism. Charyung had trashed his workspace. Lee Pil-gyu delivered devastating blows, but Charyung deftly dodged them. Lee Pil-gyu's fist broke through the wall and he asked Charyuna, "What's the matter? Why doesn't he show off his abilities anymore?" Charyung replied that he was simply not a fool and had no plans to jump into the trap set for him. Im Jae-hwan patted the customer on the shoulder and noted the good level of his fighter. Lee Pil-gyu's physical strength after the transformation was comparable to an average truck. If it hit him, it could crush all his bones. Im Jae-hwan shouted at Charyunu so that he finishes faster. He said that if Lee Pil-gyu destroys anything else, he will cut it down, Charin's salary. Lee Pil-gyu approached Charyunu said that Im Jae-hwan still didn't understand what was going on. Lee Pil-gyu told Cha Ryan himself admitted that he wasn't equipped to fight a professional, but the guy just chuckled and said it wouldn't be a bad idea. Charyung picked up a long beam. He looked at the simple weapon and said he thought it would be enough. Due to their superior resilience and agility, tanks were considered simply invincible. Charyung still didn't try to attack the enemy. He thought that everyone has their own weaknesses and enemies. Im Jae-hwan noted with certainty that this was the end. Two fighters radiating energy clashed in close combat. Charyung thought about those who were able to concentrate enormous destructive power into one point. The fighters dealt blow after blow to each other. Sparks flew for many steps around. After one successful hit, Lee Pil-gyu started bleeding from his mouth. The huge tank collapsed to the floor, and a very small guy stood above him unharmed. Lee Pil-gyu said without getting up that he wanted to know where Charyung learned this spinning technique. Charyung replied that he thought he had no idea about any techniques, but he understood that Lee Pil-gyu might have actually seen her before. Charyung thought of another warrior of great power who possessed this technique. This hunter was his father. When Charyung was just a child, his father was the best hunter. Little Charyung carefully crept out of the house to watch his father practice in the yard. This man's name was Yusong. When he was young, he was a soldier who fought monsters. Yu Seong was one of the first to discover within himself the unusual abilities that allowed him to win these battles. He was the one who led the people into this difficult battle. This man was from the first generation of heroes who became the first hunters. Yu Seong lived through the most terrible times, but for those born much later, he became a legend forever etched in history. After all, for the hunters themselves, those times were hell. He was the only one who survived from Yu Seong's squad. There wasn't enough information yet about what the dungeons were. Monsters that might not seem dangerous in today's world were comparable to an unknown disaster for the hunters of that time. They didn't necessarily look like humans, some resembled giant worms with toothy mouths. People often started running when they saw such a monster. Those who overcame fear found ways to deal with it. They found weapons suitable for killing monsters. In the dungeons, special alloys were used that were resistant to corrosion. Yu Seong was one of those who stood in the way of an unknown enemy. It was a very hard life. It required special courage to go into a hopeless attack. The first generation of hunters risked their lives using trial and error. The group that found Yu Seong after the fight with the giant worm consisted of 3 people. They were amazed by what they saw. The fighter sat next to the defeated monster, all alone. Those of the first generation who survived gained experience and achievements. They did it for the sake of future generations. In the end, they became heroes. Like Dragon Slayer Yu Seong. This nickname was given to the one who was the first among people to kill a dragon. He was the best among the hunters in Asia, in this world. Charyong respected and envied his father more than anyone else. He firmly believed that his father was invincible until he spied on him training. He saw the mighty warrior spitting out blood after coughing. Little Charyong ran to his father, afraid for him. Yu Seong held out his hand warningly, stopping his son. The cause of the Dragon Slayer's illness turned out to be poison. Charyong looked at his father and cried bitterly. While hunting in the dungeons, Yu Seong was poisoned, and there was no way to cure him. The illness left him bedridden. He tried to overcome this difficulty. His physical condition had reached its limit after all these years. He was very exhausted. In this situation, even his colleagues, for whom Yu Seong had risked his life more than once, betrayed him. They took advantage of his illness and appropriated his achievements and property. Yu Seong's physical and mental suffering continued for several years. As time passed, the world began to forget the name of Dragon Slayer Yu Seong. It was no longer possible to see that image of a hero in him. He lost everything he had, suffered from an unknown disease, and was now just a former hunter, forgotten by everyone. Charyong stood over his fallen opponent. He never forgot who his father had once been. Charyong did not explain this to Lee Pil-gyu. He threw away the beam with which he had struck him and walked away. Im Jae-hwan looked at the customer and said that it was not difficult. The customer couldn't believe his own eyes that Lee Pil-gyu had lost to some very young guy. Im Jae-hwan said that Lee Pil-gyu was not a good hunter. Charyong turned around and said that just by seeing Lee Pil-gyu bragging about beating up his own colleague, one could immediately tell his low level. The guy explained that there are only 2 cases of good hunters resigning. Charyong said that former hunters are those who are no longer able to continue their work due to injuries, or who die during a raid. Charyong pointed out that if a client pays Lee Pil-gyu more than the lowest rate, it would be better to fire him. If he's only after weight, anyone could do that. Im Jae-hwan put his arm around the customer's shoulders and said that Charyong was exaggerating and that his dear customer should be understanding. Then the broker smiled and added that the fee for the service would be twice as high. The customer got angry and asked what kind of nonsense this was. Im Jae-hwan explained that the client was the one who started bullying him first. The broker said that nothing is done for free. The customer glanced sideways at Im Jae-hwan and replied that he understood, and that's what they would do. Im Jae-hwan called out to Charyong. The broker asked him if he had heard of the celestial wasp, and Charyong choked on the water he was drinking. Charyong asked if he would have to fight her, and remarked that it was too much. The heavenly wasp was the name of a monster that was known as the most dangerous beast not only on the Korean peninsula, but throughout the world. Uido area, where the sky wasp nest is located, has become the most difficult area in Korea. Im Jae-hwan said that it was difficult to deal with even one individual, so there were entire troops there, so the smuggler didn't have a chance. The client told Im Jae-hwan that a major raid had taken place yesterday that had not been covered by the media. the state provided support to the military, and a team of 7 white rank hunters was assembled. Charyong was surprised by this news. 7 hunters was a lot. Im Jae-hwan replied that all the Korean stars had gathered, and usually, as soon as a couple showed up, all the newspapers would shout about it. Their goal was to destroy the sky wasps, but they failed, but they did manage to hunt the queen. One of those 7 hunters took the royal jelly of the sky wasps, persuaded one of his men in the special forces, and secretly smuggled the item out. Charyong had heard of royal jelly, and Im Jae-hwan explained that it was a nutrient that the wasps fed to the new queen. Charyong winced. He couldn't believe that a white-ranked hunter would decide to engage in smuggling for some nutrient. Im Jae-hwan said that the royal jelly of the sky wasps has appeared several times already, and the person who ate it was able to come back to life from an incurable state. Charyong was very impressed by the story he heard. All the nooks and crannies leading to the dungeons must be under strict control. This is the official position of the Hunters Association and the government. Im Jae-hwan claimed that, in reality, things were not like that at all. The broker stood in front of a large metal door. He touched the door, and a glow of energy emanated from his hand. Warmly dressed, Charyong looked at the protective glasses in his hands. Im Jae-hwan said that he needs to be careful not to die, especially this time. Charyong remained thoughtful and did not respond in any way. Im Jae-hwan noticed that the guy was thinking about something else and not answering. He asked if it was because of the royal jelly. He suggested that Charyong is haunted by the words about a potion that can revive the dead. Charyong turned away and replied that it didn't matter whether he cared or not, he still knew it was an exaggeration. He thought that even if this medicine, which had no equal, existed, it still would not be able to cure his father. Charyong knew that if there was any way, he would never lose hope. He swung open the heavy gate and a blinding light burst through the resulting gap. Charyong found himself in a sunlit wasteland, peering into the distance. After the merger, various dungeons appeared all over the earth. There were several of the largest on the Korean peninsula. The first was where Jeju Island merged with the hot rock. Charyong adjusted his goggles, thinking about what lay ahead. The second large dungeon was where the Igar jungle merged with part of the Uido area of Seoul. It was a huge dungeon, in the center of which was the Yeoido district, as well as the Mapo, Yongsan, and Yeongdepo districts. This dungeon has not yet been cleared. Many hunters said goodbye to life in it. One of the smuggler's men delivered the goods to the meeting place. Contact with him was lost when he arrived there. Most likely he was injured, or in a dangerous situation. Im Jae-hwan believed that the man was injured by the heavenly wasps while he was running away. Cha's task Ryana was to check the scene and bring the goods if they were there. Im Jae-hwan told Charyong to stop thinking about strange things and focus on work. Charyong chuckled and asked if the broker thought he would run away with the trophy. Im Jae-hwan thoughtfully blew out a cigarette smoke and said that Charyong was not a fool to do such a thing. Im Jae-hwan asked Charyong must be more careful than usual, because royal jelly is a very expensive item and is coveted by more than just humans. Charyong used a strong rope to climb down the cliff. The guy landed in the middle of the forest, between tall trees with dense crowns. The whole forest was filled with the smell of royal jelly. Charyong looked around, and one detail caught his attention, causing him to frown. The monster's footprint he found was so huge that one could fall into it. The scent that hung in this forest would attract all sorts of monsters. Jin Se-ram from Hero High School was also here, and she was currently hiding behind the trunk of a tall tree. The girl was in the most terrible situation of her entire life. She thought the second semester midterms would be easy, but something appeared in front of her. A monster that shouldn't have been in this place had appeared, and now Jin Se-ram was hiding from this giant. The girl pressed herself against the tree in horror, closing her eyes. Suddenly she felt that something had changed in the forest. The exam was supposed to be very simple. It was necessary to collect as many coins as possible, which were hidden in different corners of the dungeon. It was a practical exam, and the difficulty level in the exam area was at its lowest, a hunting ground for beginners. Jin Se-ram looked at her palms. Taking advantage of her confusion, the giant monster came very close. The girl finally noticed the danger threatening her, and her eyes filled with horror. The monster was ready to attack. Jin Se-ram knew she had to escape, but it seemed impossible. If there was a chance of success, it would be closer to a miracle. But despite this, Jin Se-ram decided to fight and took out her bow, which could fire 3 arrows at once. The monster she had to deal with was called the Titanium Ape. 3 arrows left the bowstring and flew quickly towards the target. They pierced the monster's palm, which it used to cover its muzzle.
You can feel it in the floor, boys. Hey. Listen. You were lying in the front row, saying you believed in everything I played, sharing secrets in the back door, smoke, helping at the promises we made. But when you stormed and tore my branches, you were ghosting fixes in the sun, breaking to my downfall with their glasses, calling what we had just for fun. Fake friends say, like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shame. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their names. But my heart keeps turning pain into a chorus. I rise again from every flame. Let the fire burn the mask right off their faces. Unlock our key from the embers of my name, from the embers of my name. I've been wrestling with the mirror, asking, was it Lee who wore the lie? Did I barter all my boundaries just to keep a handful by my side? They were cheering when I stumbled, calling my confession just again. But I found a quiet kindness in forgiving who I was back then. From faith and faith, like vapor in the morning, clear as the light. I see their shade. I was breaking while they toasted to the story, using my crafts to carve their lamb from the embers. Oh, from the embers of my day. Oh, from the embers.
Jinsei Ram thought that the monster's hide was taller than the armored cars, and her arrows didn't cause any noticeable damage to it. The monster stood unharmed. No matter how much Jinsei Ram shot, its skin could not be penetrated. The girl did not give up and continued to fight. She flew into the air to hit the target from different sides. Jinsei Ram was completely focused on what she was doing. She managed to make arrows fly along a wide variety of trajectories. Thanks to this, the shots hit the monster's chest. None of the attacks had any effect on the monster, and he didn't even need to dodge or block the blows. Looking at the monster's grinning face with its tongue hanging out, Jinsei Ram thought that she needed to get closer so that the monster would become a little less protected. Jinsei Ram was able to use magic on the tips of her arrows. She lit her arrows and prepared for another attack. The girl was a mage archer. She used a technique called fire explosion. The types of magic that could be imbued into arrows were limitless. To achieve complete victory, Jin Se-ram chose an explosion that soared above the treetops as the girl put maximum strength and power into it. She expected that such a blow would work on a monster with a 3-star danger level. Of course, this only applied to the situation when you hit the target exactly, and the girl was surprised to find that the titanium ape had survived by climbing up the tree trunks. Jin Se-ram tried to understand what had happened. Whether the monster had dodged or jumped up before the shot, the girl understood that she would not be able to repeat the attack a second time. Jin Se-ram froze in front of the monster, even though she needed to run. The monster rushed towards her first. He was very fast and almost caught up with her in a few steps. Jin Se-ram also ran, her eyes wide with horror. A bright flash hit the monster straight. The young man intervened in what was happening. It was Charyung. Jin Se-ram looked at him in amazement. Charyung looked at his victim, who had been hit in the chin and knocked to the ground. He thought the blow might not have been enough. Charyung reached into his pocket for a weapon and pulled out a pistol. He resolutely moved into a new attack. Jin Se-ram couldn't believe that this man was rushing towards the monster, ready to fight him face to face. The monster was huge and raised its monstrous fist to strike. The stranger could die. Charyung shouted at the girl to close her eyes. Jin Se-ram watched what was happening in fear. Cha's face, Ryana's face twisted with tension. He practically flew up to the very face of the monster, which rose to its feet again. Charyung pointed his firearm at the monster. A blinding flash illuminated everything around. Jin Se-ram covered her eyes with her hands from the unbearable light. The titanium monkey was blinded and confused. Charyung thought he had just used his last charge. This tool was called the stun torch, a tool made from the scales of a glowing deep-sea fish. At one time, its disarm function won the love of many hunters, but the price was high. However, due to the inept use of its powerful properties, people began to lose their sight. Charyung knew that the use of such weapons was currently considered illegal. Jin Se-ram carefully removed her hands from her face and opened her eyes. Charyung said that he had already helped, and from now on everyone is responsible for themselves, and added that there were only a few seconds left. Charyung believed that no matter what happened inside the dungeon, he must not be seen by the hunters, so he did not fight them or help them. MJ Hwan said that, to put it bluntly, they all looked like cockroaches. He asked Charen, does he know that smugglers make good money? Charyung knew that if he got into everything, he might get crushed one day. Charyung headed away. Jin Se-ram ran after him through the forest. It wasn't easy for the girl to catch up with her accidental savior. Soon she could only make out his figure as a small dot in the distance. Suddenly the stranger disappeared, dissolving into the green forest twilight, although a moment ago he was ahead. He appeared suddenly, knocking Jin Se-ram to the ground and pinning her throat with his spiked staff, asking who she was. Jin Se-ram replied that she just wanted to thank him for saving her. Charyung didn't believe her, and asked her if she thought he was an ignorant idiot. Jin Se-ram stated that this was not all she wanted to say. She knew that the man in front of her was a smuggler. Charyung was surprised to hear that the girl wanted to hire him for money. He looked at the girl and recognized the emblem of the School of Heroes on her clothes. The guy replied that he was not going to help her a third time. He let her go and was about to leave, saying as a parting shot that he wasn't interested in knowing how crazy the rich kids at the School of Heroes had become. He looked over his shoulder and added that if the girl followed him, he would bury her. Jin Se-ram looked at his back, deep in thought. The reward for informing on a smuggler was 50 million won, and for a prisoner they gave about 450 million. Charyung was surprised to see that the girl did not leave him alone. The medallion he saw in front of him was called the Blood of Enkel. Jin Se-ram said that even if she captured 5 people like him, that money would not be enough to buy such a thing. Jin Se-ram said that it was an advance payment, and if Charyung helped her pass the exam, she would pay the rest. Charyung replied that he thought she was just a rich girl, but now he was sure she was completely crazy. The girl asked if it was that important. She said that what was important was that now her interlocutor had a chance to completely change his life, and she showed him the medallion. Charyung stated that he knew this would happen. He told the girl that it was her own fault, even though he had no reason to kill her, and Jin Se-ram asked him what he was talking about. They stood opposite each other in a clearing in the forest, and Charyung suddenly looked up, saying that there were only a few seconds left, just as he had warned. The titanium ape jumped at them, and the monster's eyes were red. Jin Se-ram also turned to face the monster. The girl's eyes were wide open. Charyung threw his spear to her, and the girl caught it with surprise. The guy shouted that he didn't give her the gun so she could stand and watch. He reminded her how Jin Se-ram had already launched a fire blast at the monster, and now she needed to do the same. Charyung demanded that the girl put magic into the tip of the spear and throw it back. Jin Se-ram exclaimed that she had no more magic left. Charyung replied seriously that she had to solve this problem somehow. The titanium monkey was approaching, and it was impossible to hold out for long with bare hands. Jin Se-ram held the shaft of the spear, and fiery energy swirled around her. The girl only had a quarter of her magical power left. With such low power, the titanium monkey could not be harmed. Jin Se-ram thought that while the smuggler was distracting the monster, she could escape from here alone. Charyung caught the magically charged spear that the girl threw to him. Jin Se-ram thought she must be going crazy. The spear in the smuggler's hand spun so fast that it looked like he was fighting with a wheel of fire. Charyung told the girl that this fire was less than a quarter of what he had seen before. He added that this would still be enough for him. With these words, Charyung rushed towards the titanium monkey. There are words that students at the School of Heroes hear all the time, that in a battle with a monster, it is not just destructive power that is important. The right moment to attack was of much greater importance. Also important was the feeling that allowed one to hit the target accurately. These were sensations and abilities that all hunters were supposed to have. The smuggler that Jin Se-ram met rushed forward furiously, joining the battle. He attacked successfully and the monster was engulfed in flames. The most successful of the blows hit the titanium monkey on the chin. Cha Point's Ryan was shattered into pieces by the intense fighting. Jin Se-ram had her own complicated history, connected with the School of Heroes and not only with it. She was a cheerful child who ran around the yard with her friends. She saw her father's people coming for her. Jin Se-ram was waiting for the car that was sent to pick her up. The girl said goodbye to her friends and said that she would see them tomorrow. Jin Se-ram knew that many people envied her. It was believed that this girl had everything she wanted. Jin Se-ram sat in the back seat of the car. She could really get her hands on almost anything that caught her eye. They drove past a tall modern building. This was the main building of the fourth largest company in South Korea's business community, the Chinsun Group. The heir of this company married an elf, a representative of another world. Jin Se-ram was the couple's child. Through the car window she saw the hunters driving somewhere with weapons. She passionately desired to become a huntress. It was her cherished dream. The fair-haired elf looked straight ahead and said outright that nothing would work. The girl was almost human. She had too little elven blood. Jin Se-ram, unable to catch her breath, fell to her knees on the playground. The elf asked if the girl had not only not been stopped, but had even been encouraged to do this. Jin Sung-gyu, Jin Se-ram's father, said he did not encourage her, but rather supported the path his daughter chose. He noted that one did not have to have the abilities of the elves to become a hunter, and his interlocutor did not object to this. The elf added that such abilities would not be superfluous for a person. Jin Se-ram was not much taller than the average teenager. The elf said that Jin Sung-gyu's daughter is not an ordinary person. Jin Sung-gyu wanted to understand what he meant. The elf meant that this girl would not give up easily. He smiled and said that in this way, she was very similar to his sister. Humans could not compare to elves, even if they died in battle with a monster, and then resurrected. If Jin Se-ram tries his best, he might be able to reach the average level. For an ordinary person, even this was recognition and almost praise. The elf believed that his niece had been born with too much besides abilities. Jin Se-ram was too rich, from too influential a family, the daughter of two famous parents. All this could instantly devalue all her efforts and make a laughingstock out of her. She was constantly under the spotlight of everyone's attention. This attitude could not be tolerated for long. Abilities didn't fall out of the sky on anyone, but the random smuggler Jin Se-ram met in the forest did have them. The girl watched his fight with the monster in amazed delight. Charyung finished it and froze, clutching the spear in one hand. The monster lay on the ground, its neck ablaze with fire. Charyung slowly walked past the defeated enemy. Turning around, he noticed the lonely figure of Jin Se-ram at the edge of the clearing. "This can't be," the girl said, pointing at Cha Ryona. "We are about the same age." Charyung thought he had broken the glasses Im Jae-hwan had given him, saying they were very expensive. Charyung was very surprised, because such a thing could be bought for 5,000 won, but Im Jae-hwan did not agree. More than 4 types of magic were cast on the glasses. Now they were shattered into pieces. Charyung pressed his palm to his face and thought that he was just unlucky today. He didn't expect anyone to call out to him now, and he glanced at the girl through his fingers. Jinsai Ram asked if Charyung was a student at her school. He turned to her irritably and asked what kind of nonsense she was imagining. He extended his hand and demanded that the girl give him what she had promised. The girl gave him the medallion without further ado. Charyung looked at the artifact with suspicion and thought irritably about the rich kids. Jinsei Ram said that Charayan probably needs money, and she understands that not only at school, but at any institution that trains future hunters, the tuition is not small. Charyung confidently replied that he doesn't go to such places. The girl was surprised, but Charyung assured her that she had approached the wrong person. The guy said that he doesn't study at the school for hunters, and has never even been anywhere near it. Jinsei Ram asked who taught him this fighting technique back then. Charyung crossed his arms over his chest and replied that no one taught him. He claimed to be self-taught. Shocked, Jinsei Ram couldn't believe such nonsense. She saw these movements, this sense of time. It seemed to her that they were making fun of her, and she began to scream in indignation. An ID card flew into the girl's face. Jinsai Ram saw the student ID card of Donggang High School. It was a simple school with a liberal arts focus. The girl said that this couldn't be. Charyung pointed his spear at the girl and declared that no matter what might not be there, she also had to show him either her student ID or some other document. Jinsei Ram showed her student ID card from Hero High School. She was a freshman and the same age as Cha Ryona. The guy wasn't going to give the document back and hid it in his pocket. Jinsei Ram asked why he needed it. Charyung replied that if she wanted to give him a job, he needed to take everything he could so that she couldn't change her mind. Besides, Charyung added, nothing was over yet and ordered the girl to come closer. Jinsei Ram walked over with a look of surprise and embarrassment, and the smuggler put his hand on her shoulder, pulling her towards him. Charyung picked up his phone and was about to take a photo of them together, so that instead of a contract he would have proof of their accomplice. He reminded the girl that accomplices of smugglers receive exactly the same punishment. At that moment, Jinsei Ram realized one thing. It is quite possible that she has gotten involved with a man who is much more dangerous than she thought. However, it was too late to change anything, and the photo of the 2 smuggler friends against the backdrop of the destroyed monster had already taken its place on the stranger's phone. After this, Charyung suggested counting and first asked the girl to tell him what exactly he should do. Jinsei Ram explained that they needed to collect coins for the Hero School quest. In 6 hours, they had to collect coins that were hidden in different corners of the examination field. They also had to find an information cube with a picture of coins, which Jinsei Ram had to use to confirm her identity. Jinsei Ram showed her future companion 1 coin she had found and said that she needed to find 1 more for her to pass the exam. According to her, the coin did not need to be looked for too far, and Charyung specified where exactly. This place was located where the Eugene Shopping Center used to be. This information made an impression on Cha Ryona was so impressed that she even looked up from her phone. That's how it all happened, he said, and Jinsei Ram asked him what he meant. Charyung was sure that she had not stumbled upon the titanium monkey by chance. The guy himself was looking for something, and it was inside that shopping center. He briefly explained to her the essence of his task, and Jinsei Ram was horrified when she imagined the heavenly wasp, but Charyung reassured her that he was not looking for the wasp itself, but something like its honey. He said that this thing has a very strong aroma that attracts monsters, and the titanium ape appeared because it also followed the smell. Charyung asked if the girl should go there in person, and if the coins were really only there, and Jinsei Ram thought deeply. The girl admitted that there were simply no more of them in other places because they had been collected by other teams. Charyung understood what was going on. He had been wondering from the very beginning why this girl was walking around all alone. For him, the way things turned out was for the best. Charyung suggested that he take out the coin and leave safely. That was his job. Jinsei Ram named the price she was willing to pay for completing the task. The amount mentioned surprised Cha Ryona, but the girl said that this is all the cash she can use right now. She looked at her phone screen and added that if that wasn't enough, she needed a little more time to get a larger sum. Charyung said that if there was a reason for extra work, then she would pay for the extra expenses. He asked Jin Se-ram if she still had magical powers. Charyung quickly disappeared into the forest. The girl thought he was incredibly fast. She had to make a great effort to keep up with him. Charyung thought as he ran that he was shocked by the amount offered, and now regretted that he had not thought to ask for more. Jin Se-ram asked permission to ask her companion something. The girl wanted to know if this man had really not studied with anyone. Charyung deftly jumped over the obstacles and replied that it wasn't like he learned from anyone, he learned from them as a child. Suddenly, they noticed two monsters with huge claws. These were level 2 cluster raptors. Charyung told his new companion to get ready. He had never really been trained in hunter techniques anywhere. All his skill was mostly gained by risking his life and fighting with his bare hands. There was one exception. As a child, he watched his father's technique, which taught him 3 simple techniques. This was the science that Charyung was going to use now, rushing at the monsters. The first technique was called the needle. He mobilized everything the hunter had, speed, body weight, strength, and directed it at the enemy's weakest point. Charyung struck the cluster raptor with his spear, causing blood to spurt out of the monster's mouth. It seemed easy, but in reality it was not so simple. The feelings and abilities were the result of experience. The monster fell at Cha's feet. Ryona, even among the high-ranking hunters, few could say that they had mastered such a technique on their own. Charyung mastered this technique to perfection. Jin Se-ram also dealt with her opponent, literally piercing him with arrows. The girl felt that what was happening was strange. Cluster raptors typically gather in groups of at least 5. Charyung said that it wasn't just Jin Se-ram who suffered damage due to the royal jelly. They stood at the place where the ruined forest gave way to the ruined city, and Charyung said that soon all sorts of creatures would gather here. Charyung suggested that they rest for a while before moving on. Jin Se-ram asked if Charyung received any private lessons as a child. Charyung replied that there were no lessons, he just watched the training a few times. It was even harder to believe that you could just watch and learn a few techniques. Charyung asked why the girl was looking at him with such a puzzled expression. Jin Se-ram honestly admitted that her new acquaintance irritated her, but Charyung didn't understand why. The girl silently threw him a small object, which he deftly caught. He had an ampule of endurance elixir in his palm, and Charyung asked why the girl gave it to him. Jin Se-ram told him to drink this medicine, since he was most likely not in the best condition right now either. Charyung said with a smile that if the girl gave him the ampule because he irritated her, then she could speak worse about him. The boy hid the elixir in his pocket, and Jin Se-ram asked if he wasn't going to drink it. Charyung said that he could sell the ampule profitably later. Jin Se-ram asked if the guy didn't know how much she cost. Charyung explained that by selling it on the black market, he could get about 1,000,000 won. Jin Se-ram thought this guy was very strange. Charyung said that since the girl had already taken her dose of the medicine, there was no need to linger, it was time to move on. He walked forward and glanced sideways at his companion, thinking that the children of rich parents were very strange. They reached the former shopping mall, and Charyung said that Jin Se-ram probably knew, but he wanted to confirm some details again. Charyung reminded them that their goal was not to hunt, but to safely get what each of them needed and get out of here. He told me to control myself and follow his instructions, no matter what kind of monster was inside. Charyung said that even if Jin Se-ram had studied a lot at her school, he knew the science of survival better, so the girl would have to trust him. Jin Se-ram looked down and agreed with the guy. She couldn't understand why she had such a strange feeling right now. She spent 6 months at the School of Heroes, during which time she was unable to achieve recognition and settle in there. The girl was going to go into the danger zone with someone for the first time. The old building they were about to enter had long since cracked, and climbing plants had covered the facade. It was a large shopping center with many dark, half-empty floors. The partners froze on the threshold in extreme surprise. "What is this?" Jin Se-ram asked fearfully. Charyung replied that he didn't know because he was also seeing something like this for the first time. The room in front of them was covered in blood, and body parts of torn monsters lay everywhere. Charyung thought that man was a much braver creature than he thought he was, and he only needed to prepare himself, and he could face any situation. If we talk about problems, they can arise when what happens goes beyond what is expected. Jinzi Ram, looking at the corpses, thought that these were all the monsters that lived in this zone, and they were quite dangerous even for professional hunters. The girl thought with horror about what awaited them inside. Chaoryong told his companion not to relax. He said that there was something dangerous inside, and asked if the girl didn't know about it. Chaoryong added that Jinsei Ram might be surprised because it's worse here than she imagined, but that doesn't change anything. Something moved in the depths of the room, attracting attention. Chaoryong grabbed the spear and pointed it at the approaching creature. This monster was called the Slashing Rib, and its threat level was quite high. Chaoryong was ready to enter this fight. An insanely long tongue burst out of the monster's grinning mouth and almost reached Chaoryana. The guy deftly dodged, blocking the attack with his spear. He watched in amazement as the creature's tongue twirled around the shaft. The monster snatched the weapon from Cha-hee, took Ryan from his arms, and pulled him towards himself. Chaoryong and the monster looked at each other from opposite ends of the Great Hall. Chaoryong attacked the monster, again using the techniques he knew, and kicked the enemy's vulnerable spots. Jinsei Ram watched this fight from the sidelines. Having defeated the enemy, Chaoryong returned to his companion, and she admitted that at first she mistook the monster for one of the corpses, but it turned out to be so tenacious. Chaoryong objected that it wasn't a matter of survivability. Someone had deliberately left this monster alive to serve as a warning to those who entered here. When the Slashing Rib is in danger, it lets out a terrible scream, alerting other monsters, and Jinsei Ram asked who could have left it here. "It's me," the unfamiliar voice answered, explaining that he couldn't continue to stay awake and wait for him. A young man stood on the top floor and, yawning, reported that there were more of these creatures than he thought, and as soon as he dealt with them, fatigue overcame him. Jinsei Ram asked if this man was a hunter. She noticed that the stranger said he was waiting. She asked if Chaoryong knew him. The stranger said they were both too small to be smugglers. The school emblem on Jinsei Ram's clothes caught his attention. The stranger jumped down and asked if the girl was studying at the School of Heroes. Jinsei Ram replied that it was, and the stranger said that he was very sorry. Jinsei Ram was horrified to hear that she would have to die in such a place. Chaoryong asked why the girl was talking to him, because this man was not just an ordinary hunter, as she might have thought. He stated that it was a villain who was going to kill them and get the royal jelly. Chaoryong shouted that the stranger seemed to have no connection to his client and asked how he planned to deal with the consequences if he stole someone else's property. The stranger admitted that he didn't even know and would only worry about it if he was exposed. He said he was lucky. He accidentally overheard that his colleague was going to steal a precious item. He originally planned to attack when Chaoryong was heading here, but he knew that things didn't always work out the way he wanted. Now he was sorry that he hadn't been able to complete the plan. He saw the monster run away in that direction, but he couldn't find it. There must have been a shelter here where the treasure could have been hidden. Chaoryong realized that the connection with the person in charge was not interrupted because of the heavenly wasp's poison. This smiling, unfamiliar hunter was to blame for what happened. Chaoryong didn't have to fight him personally to understand one thing. The stranger took hold of the hilt of his sword. He said that Cha's death Ren is predetermined, but it can be done as painlessly as possible. Before Chaoryong was a true hunter, very different from the rabble he had met before. Chaoryong told Jinsei Ram to find her coin and get out of here as quickly as possible while he distracted the man. He explained that thanks to the stranger, the building was no longer dangerous, and Jinsei Ram asked what would happen to him then. Chaoryong remarked that nothing would change if she stayed here. The stranger said that he could hear everything and made the first lunge towards Chaoryong. Chaoryong shouted that Jinsei Ram should stop standing there and run away quickly. He added that he could only get his money if she stayed alive, and the girl started running. The stranger was surprised that she had actually left. He believed that this was not the best choice. The chances of staying alive were higher as long as the guy and the girl stuck together. The weapons crossed, creating sparks. Chaoryong stated that the stranger was talking nonsense. To the hunter's surprise, they fought on equal terms. It even seemed to him that his opponent was calculating the trajectory of the sword. This was surprising to him. Chaoryong knocked Hunter down. A bright flash blinded everyone present. Chaoryong froze in a fighting stance, catching his breath. To his astonishment, he heard a voice saying that he was a little surprised. The voice came from the dark figure. He said that he didn't think he would have to use equipment as well because he didn't perceive Charanada as serious about her age. Now, the hunter saw that his opponent was above the professional level, and he would have to work hard to eliminate that girl from the School of Heroes as well. From the darkness emerged a gold-rank hunter, in full armor, looking like a monster himself. His name was Yang Do-gyun. MJ Hwan was making himself instant noodles in his passageway under the displeased gaze of a bald customer. He offered to brew a glass for the client, but he angrily refused. MJ Hwan noted that it would be better to sit down because the fighter lying on the floor would not wake up anytime soon. The client said that this big guy had pumped up his muscles for nothing, even though he had paid him so much. The fighter claimed to be a hunter himself and boasted a lot about his strength. MJ Hwan said that he lost not because he was stupid, but because he deserved to lose. He believed that this was a big mistake. Hunters should not fight with people. This fighter was also wrong. He was trained for hunting and reconnaissance, not for fighting other hunters. He might have been able to deal with the monster, but it is not surprising that he was defeated by the smuggler. The customer said that he heard that the hunters were fighting among themselves. MJ Hwan agreed that such cases do happen. The higher their level, the further things can go. Even comrades and colleagues who fight together, relying on each other, can stab each other in the back out of greed. The customer asked if they kill each other. MJ Hwan said that no one can stop them from doing this, because anything can happen inside the dungeon. For example, you can say that a monster killed your comrade, no alibi is even required. The higher the hunter's level, the more they train in anticipation of fighting each other. But Lee Pilgyu wasn't a hunter of that level. MJ Hwan said that bragging about beating up a co-worker sounds cute. If Pilgyu was caught doing this, it means the incident took place outside the dungeon. There must have been some minor squabble over equipment. When hunters go hunting, they take armor and weapons with them. MJ Hwan said that if he had at least this friend could fight. Charyong was preparing for a fight with the hunter in the dungeon, and the smuggler only had a spear against him. For hunters, equipment constitutes half of their combat power. Charyong didn't miss his attack. He hit the enemy exactly where he should have, but it wasn't enough for the gold rank hunter's armor. Yang Do-kyun said that there was no need to think so much about all sorts of nonsense and attacked. The hunter's sword crossed with Cha's spear, Ryona. It wasn't easy to withstand the force with which the hunter pressed. Yang Do-kyun stated that it was simply impolite both to him and to his own life. Yang Do-kyun threw Cha Wei-ren with a well-aimed blow. The smuggler had no intention of giving up. He looked straight into the eyes of his opponent. The spear in his hands drew various figures. "What's wrong with you?" asked Yang Do-kyun. "Come on, show me again what you can do." The shadow jacket from Yang Do-gyun's armor, using the user's blood, provided support for physical strength and also formed a protective cover from blows. Yang Do-kyun used the berserker style. Charyong thought that it was impossible for him not to have weak points. But if you respond to the hunter's attacks ineptly, he will kill Charyana. Charyong was focused on what he was doing. He tried to dodge every blow from the hunter. Yang Do-kyun triumphantly drove his opponent into a corner. The hunter noted that Charyong had lasted quite a long time. Charyong asked if today was a special day. Kyun's attacked and said that it was his favorite piece of clothing. Charyong noticed that there was nothing special about his opponent. He admitted that he was initially scared by the hunter's aura, but it's worth considering that Charyong himself was an ordinary schoolboy who came with nothing. He looked at Yang Do-kyun and said that he only relied on his equipment and he himself would like to have such armor. Charyong knew very well that his opponent was in a hurry. After all, he needed to destroy Charyan and then catch up with Se-ram so that she forever remained silent about what she saw. Charyong was stalling for time as much as he could. Yang Do-kyun was in an increasingly urgent hurry. Charyong moved quickly. There was also a second unique technique. Charyong also mastered it in childhood, spying on his father. Cha alone, Ryan, he used the force of his opponent's attacks against him to deliver a powerful blow. He himself did not fully master this technique. It was called Zib and was truly destructive for the enemy. Charyong wiped the blood from his lips and said that he never imagined that he would have to use this technique against a person. He didn't think that there would be a professional hunter who would attack him so thoughtlessly. Charyong suggested that the enemy surrender, because no matter what he did now, he would not win. Yang Do-kyun grabbed a specially shaped knife. He did not answer. Charyonu got nothing but curses. The hunter plunged the knife into his own chest. Charyung looked at what was happening with bewilderment. Yang Do-kyun declared that he would definitely destroy him. The 5th floor of the shopping center was dark and empty. Jin Si-ram looked ahead with a puzzled expression. In front of her was the Hero School ID cube she was looking for. Jin Si-ram walked up to him and logged in. The girl found what she was looking for. Now she needed to go back. Jin Si-ram thought sadly about everything that had happened. She remembered how Charyung told her to run away quickly. And she started running because he said he could only get his money if she stayed alive. Jin Si-ram tried to think that nothing would change even if she went back there. She remembered the hunter's confident face, his professional sword. She convinced herself that Charyung wouldn't have fought without an escape plan in mind. Jin Si-ram stood alone in the middle of the corridor. It was many years ago, somewhere far from the dungeons, one guy roughly grabbed another by the collar. The second one had blood on his face and looked beaten. He said that he would not behave like that again in front of the one he called Do-kyun. Young Do-kyun considered himself a genius. Since childhood, everything came easy to him, and he knew it. His fight with another young man took place on a sports field, and a crowd of onlookers gathered around. Yang Do-kyun was very talented. Adults recognized this. His peers admired him. But there was one thing that he couldn't do for a very long time. He had heard that you could only get in there through connections, that they looked more at money than at ability, and it seemed to him that this was true. If it were a contest of skill and ability, he certainly wouldn't have lost. Kyun passed the challenge, breaking all records and taking first place. All the other students had difficulty passing this test. But Yang Do-kyun was special. People were whispering about him in the corridors. He was in first place with an insurmountable advantage in points. He was on a completely different level than everyone else. When he finally graduated from school, the director congratulated him. He shook his hand and predicted that Yang Do-kyun would become a first-class hunter, wishing him to never become arrogant and to move forward. Yang Do-kyun considered this man a failure who was sent out to teach school children. He was going to look down on this man from above, from a place where ordinary people could not reach. In the dungeons, he had to face something that made him afraid. He saw a man standing with a spear over a fallen monster and saying that he was told that there was an emergency here. He ran as fast as he could, but nothing of the sort was found here. Yang Do-kyun understood that this man had single-handedly destroyed the monster that had just killed his entire team. Yang Do-kyun looked at the man as he approached him. He was well aware of the look directed at him in return. It was then that he realized for the first time something he had never even thought about before. The words of that old man from the school were not advice, but consolation. Yang Do-kyun was not chosen. He was just one of the ordinary people. Perhaps just a little better than others. Now, many years later, Yang Do-kyun finds himself face to face with an unusual opponent. The hunter's armor was made from a living bloodsucker monster that Do-kyun allowed to absorb the blood that flowed to his heart. It was the price he paid for killing Ryana. Charyung wasn't so sure that this would happen. It sounded like a rather dangerous stunt. Yang Do-kyun himself took on the form of a monster and attacked the enemy. Charyung noticed that the speed of his movements was not that fast. The monster that the hunter had become was approaching. The whip-like hand of darkness began to strike, which was very difficult to dodge. Charyung couldn't block all the attacks aimed at him. Blood was streaming down his face. Yang Do-kyun said that some of Cha's punches Ryan managed to block. He had an extraordinary reaction speed. The hunter did not understand why this man was involved in smuggling. Charyung was surprised to hear this sudden praise. Regarding the smuggling, he replied that it did not concern Yang Do-kyun. Yang Do-kyun replied that, no matter what, he was grateful. Now Yang Do-kyun had the opportunity to trample someone like Charyung. Charyung gathered all his remaining strength and rushed at the enemy. Yang Do-kyun exclaimed that Charyung was a good boy, and suggested that he show more enthusiasm. Charyung thought that the enemy wouldn't be able to keep attacking him forever. If a monster feeds on the blood of its host, it will eventually reach its limit. Charyung needed to try to spend blood, then use the needle technique. The monster loomed over him, growling that he knew everything himself. Charyung had time to think that it was too late. The flame struck the monster, illuminating the entire hall with a flash. Charyung turned around in surprise to see his unexpected assistant. On the second floor stood Jin Si-ram, holding a bow in her hands, an arrow having just been released from the string. Charyung smiled and said that Jin Si-ram was really very naughty. Kyun, who had turned into a monster, also saw the girl. Charyung said it was impressive and delivered another accurate blow. Having regained his former form, Yang Do-kyun collapsed to the floor unconscious, and Jinsei Ram asked if he was dead. The girl came closer and leaned over the hunter, but Charyung said that there was no need to worry too much about him because people like him did not live long. Charyung explained to the girl that this man would not bother them much anymore, otherwise he would have to say goodbye to his career and reputation. Charyung said that it could be considered that Jinsei Ram had repaid his debt, and the girl asked again what debt he meant. The guy reminded her that he saved her life, and that this happened more than once. The first time was when he intervened in a situation where Se Ram was attacked by a monster. Charyung said that the second time he saved Jinsei Ram's life was when she ran after him. The guy said that he was ready to forgive her twice, which made Jinsei Ram blush. The girl shouted at him, "Couldn't he just say thank you?" They walked through the destroyed parking lot of a former shopping center. A golden glow was pouring out from a crack in the floor. Charyung and Jinsei Ram stood before descending into this shining sea. The boy and girl looked at their find and remained silent. Charyung began to carefully descend the steps. Jinsei Ram followed him. Jinsei Ram smelled a special sweet smell. Charyung suddenly stopped, staring at something ahead. A trail of blood led to a dead body sitting against the wall. It was a man in camouflage uniform and a bulletproof vest, holding a suitcase in his hands. Charyung walked up to the dead man and looked at him carefully. For a moment, the boy bowed his head and closed his eyes. Charyung noticed the girl standing behind him, holding her nose with her hands. He told her that he warned her that there was nothing good inside. The companions leaned towards the suitcase. Charyung suggested checking its contents. The golden glow that filled the entire huge room came from the suitcase. Charyung opened the lid and both companions smelled a very pungent odor. The vessel, filled with radiance, emitted a distant and sweet aroma that made one forget all thoughts. "How can you not come to this smell?" asked Charyung. There were some other packages lying next to the first vessel. Charyung was curious if there was royal jelly inside too. Charyung slammed the lid shut and said that they had better get out of here as quickly as possible because there was no telling who else might show up here. The satellites climbed back up to the first floor of the shopping center. The hunter that Charyung had defeated in the duel was no longer in the place where they had left him. Jinsei Ram heard the man shout that they would see him again. The hunter was already leaving the building and finally said that he remembered their faces. Yang Do-kyun promised that he would kill them by any means necessary and started running. Charyung listened to his threats with an indifferent expression. They didn't bother him. With a wild expression on his face, Yang Do-kyun ran through the forest. After some time, the self-confident rage left him. The titanic ape blocked the hunter's path, opening its predatory mouth. The tired hunter was not ready for this meeting. The monster received its prey and immediately began to eat. Charyung and Jinsei Ram listened to the sounds coming from outside with frozen faces. The guy suggested going out through the back exit, and the girl did not object. The sun was setting behind the treetops, casting its last rays onto the territory of the dungeon. Charyung, who was dragging a heavy suitcase, caught his breath tiredly. He thought that he had reached the safe zone. He asked Jinsei Ram about the time for her exam, and she replied that it was still enough. Charyung extended his hand to her and said it was nice to meet her. There was a lot going on, and Charyung was glad that they both managed to finish their business safely. Jinsei Ram looked at the guy and said nothing. She extended her hand to him to shake. Having already taken a few steps away, Charyung asked over his shoulder whether Jinsei Ram remembered about confidentiality and the banking period. If she didn't want to meet again, she should not forget about it. Jinsei Ram tried to stop him. Charyung turned around. He didn't expect the girl to ask him to meet again. He returned to the base where Im Jae-hwan was waiting for him. "Back?" the broker asked, adding that it looked like the smuggler had a hard time. Charyung agreed. Now both of them needed to examine the contents of the suitcase. Im Jae-hwan opened the lock and looked inside the trophy. He picked up a lamp of royal jelly and said that if he could sell it, there would be a big fuss, and the broker was curious to see how many buildings he could afford to buy with that money. Yu Charyung sat tiredly and listened to the broker's praise and promises to transfer the money tomorrow. Im Jae-hwan turned around and looked at the overly thoughtful guy. He asked if he was okay, but Charyung replied that everything was fine. MJ Hwan asked the boy if he was worried about the hunter who died in the fight with him. Charyung replied that he didn't die because of a fight with him, and he didn't have to feel guilty because of him. MJ Hwan asked if something else had happened to him. Charyung assured that nothing like that happened. He asked the broker if he could take back the portion of the suitcase's contents that was not royal jelly. MJ Hwan reminded that smugglers can take anything that is not related to the order. The broker was curious about what kind of baby would eat royal jelly, and Charyung was surprised that the interlocutor used the word baby. Royal jelly could bring even the dying back to life, but it had more attractive properties. It was said to be able to expand the abilities of whoever ate it. Few people knew this, but the jelly was more effective if eaten in childhood, so it would not be fed to someone who was beyond hope. MJ Hwan believed that it should be at least a student from the School of Heroes. Charyung said goodbye to the broker and got ready to leave. Yusung's condition had gotten much worse recently. Charyung walked out into the city, where the sunset was blazing. The boy was thinking about Hero High School. Jinsi Ram told him goodbye, and that they would see each other soon. Charyung assumed that he was interested in the girl, but she said that she was not going to joke. Jinsei Ram explained that exams would be held in the winter for students from regular schools who wished to transfer to the School of Heroes. Every year they recruited 1 or 2 students, and the girl was confident that Charyung would be able to pass the test. Jinsei Ram extended her hand and told Charyung to come study with them at the School of Heroes. No hunter can clear the dungeon alone, even if he has excellent qualities as a fighter. It is almost impossible for one person to cope with the endless waves of attacking monsters. That's why every hero needs a team. Each hunter uses his own unique skill. In this way, team members make up for each other's shortcomings and overcome obstacles. What they do is called dungeon clearing. At the School of Heroes, factions are formed every year, Jinsei Ram explained, and Charyung asked whether it was necessary to choose one side and fight the other. The girl said that she wouldn't even talk about such childish jokes. There were 2 such groups in the Jinsei Ram course. They were led by 2 students who were among the top 3, both of whom were elves. Charyung asked if teams were only made up of members of one of the factions, and whether that was why Se Ram couldn't get into any of them. Jinsei Ram admitted that this was indeed the case, and that the teachers had said nothing at all about it. The search for a team depends on the student's abilities, a criterion that puzzled Charyung. Jinsei Ram admitted that she lacks abilities. The girl herself understood that she would not be able to become an excellent student. But she wasn't such a bad student that she couldn't get into any of the teams, because there was also a team of those who didn't belong to any of the groups. The leader of one of the groups, an elf, always disliked Jinsei Ram. Outwardly, she tried not to show it in any way. She simply wove her intrigues behind Jinsei Ram's back, ensuring that she would not be accepted anywhere. Charyung asked if Jinsei Ram had stolen that girl's boyfriend, but Se Ram denied it. She explained that she was holding up well now, managing on her own, without a team, but that in her 2nd and 3rd years, she wouldn't be able to do that anymore. That's why she wanted to hire Charyung. She was impressed by the guy's abilities. She wanted him to be next to her, and then perhaps she would be able to endure. A scattering of medicines and bandages on the table at home was typical for the day after a foray into the dungeons. Charyung treated and bandaged his wounds. He sat on the bed and remembered Jinsei Ram. The girl seemed funny to him. Jinsei Ram walked somewhere for a long time. Then the girl said out loud that this was the very place. It was the dungeon barrier, Gangnam 12th branch. The girl looked straight ahead. Charyung then told her that he understood everything and wished her luck, and then left. Jinsei Ram didn't think he would ever call her. "You came on time," a voice rang out, distracting Jinsei Ram from her thoughts. Standing in front of the girl was Kang Jung-guk, the homeroom teacher of Class 1-1 at Hero High School and a close combat instructor. Jinsei Ram asked what was wrong since the exam wasn't over yet, but the teacher said there was a problem. Kang Jung-guk said that monsters were found in some areas that shouldn't be there. It's good that no one was hurt, but a signal was received that in some places it would no longer be possible to conduct the exam. The place where Jinsei Ram found the coin was in just such a dangerous area. Kang Jung-guk asked if Jinsei Ram had any problems while taking the exam. Jinsei Ram replied that there was nothing. She didn't see anything unusual. Kang Jung-guk said that he understood everything. The girl didn't know that there was another monster behind her, but Kang Jung-kook noticed it and told her to move away and stand behind him. Jin Se-ram turned around, her eyes widening in fear. This monster looked much stronger than the one the girl had already met. It was a mature titan ape. Kang Jung-kook walked towards the monster, muttering that the titanium ape appearing here was strange. He was sure that such creatures did not exist in these parts. Jin Se-ram thought that something had drawn the monster here. She remembered the suitcase in Charyun's hands, and that smell, the monster came to him. Kang Jung-kook repeated that the girl should hide behind his back. The titan ape roared, ready to attack. All the teachers at the school were former hunters, so Kang Jung-kook stood before the monster. Retired due to their injuries, the teachers could no longer clear the dungeons, but their skills remained with them. The titanic ape raised his huge fist, Kang Jung-kook. The former hunter took out his weapon. The fiery whip rose up to meet the monster. She wrapped many coils around the monster's arm. When Kang Jung-kook was not yet 30, he was a hunter and earned the nickname of the Fighter of Tyranny. The monster collapsed to the ground. Kang Jung-kook looked at him. The monster was defeated. Kang Jung-kook said that in everyday life you have to restrain yourself, but Jin Se-ram was just lucky. After all, something terrible could have happened to her. A scarred hand rested on the girl's shoulder. Kang Jung-kook said it was good that she was alive. He invited Jin Se-guk to come with him from here. Kang Jung-kook didn't care about other people's opinions because he was a hero himself and trained future heroes. At the Hero High School's basic skills training camp, a different conversation was taking place. One person asked another what would happen to those who sent a request for help. The second replied that they would simply have to retake the exam, and that they were just lucky here. The man in heavy armor said that in any case, those who went in that direction were weaklings. There goes one of them, the man added, pointing to Jin Se-ram, who was coming out of the forest with the teacher. Kang Jung-kook told everyone to go to their places and wait. As soon as everyone else returns, you will need to check that everything is in place and change into your school uniform. Jin Se-ram continued to stand next to the forest. The blonde girl noticed her and said that she told everyone that Se-ram was okay. She said she didn't know how it was with others, but Jin Se-ram was quick to grasp the situation. 3 students from the school were heading towards Jin Se-ram. The blonde elf girl said that she was relieved because she was very worried. Jin Se-ram replied that it was quite unexpected that this girl was worried about her. The elf laughed and noted that she even felt offended when people said such things about her. Jin Se-ram looked at her tiredly. 6 years ago, during a training session, she tried to create a fireball in her palm. Zeke Esserm, Se-ram's uncle, watched her attempts and declared that it was weak and that the flame power needed to be increased further. He told his niece to concentrate and not be distracted by anything. Sweat poured down the girl's face. Zeke Esserm waved his hand and said that this could be the end of it. It was much better than last time. Jin Se-ram stood hunched over and listened to her uncle say that she had achieved poor results again. The girl herself understood that this was exactly how things were. She was 11 years old, and these training sessions were difficult for her. Another girl in the same room was creating large rings of flame around herself. The girl was the same age as Jin Se-ram. Her name was Anisha Esserm. Zeke Esserm thought that Anisha didn't look like a half-elf at all, and it wasn't just her appearance that showed it. Her ability to control magic was greater than that of most pure-blooded elves. Zeke Esserm told Jin Se-ram that her cousin was a genius, and if Se-ram also followed the path of a hunter, they would be constantly compared to each other. Then he added that it was even good that these comparisons would take place. But Jin Se-ram needs to be careful. If she makes a mistake, Anisha might crush her. Since then, and now, Anisha said that she just can't understand one thing. She asked why no one wanted to take Jin Se-ram into their team. Anisha said that Jin Se-ram has enough abilities. Se-ram replied that if she was so curious, then Anisha could join the same team with her. Anisha replied that this was too much. She would of course like to, but they were both long-range fighters. If they were at least on the same level, it would make sense, but no one would put 2 people in the same position. Anisha said that it might be better for Se-ram, but it could be detrimental to the other team members. The elf advised Jin Se-ram not to worry too much because they might have to retake the exam. Jin Se-ram hovered over her interlocutor and asked what difference it made to her whether she would retake the test or not, since she had already successfully passed the test. Anisha replied that Se-Ram was a good girl and probably tried hard. Then Anisha turned away from her cousin and told her not to overdo it. In the end, Se-Ram will still get her father's company, Anisha stated. The girls each went their separate ways. Jinse-Ram was angry about this situation. Anisha thought that her opponent was fighting with all her might. In the evening, Yu Charyung arrived at Seoul Sunyu University Hospital. The boy went up to his father's room and, opening the door, froze on the threshold. There were 2 doctors in the room who asked if Charyung was related to the patient, and the boy anxiously asked what had happened. Doctors explained that Yu-san had suffered a sudden seizure and was now lying unconscious, hooked up to a machine. The doctors looked at each other with alarm. This patient was a very rare case, one could even say the only one in the world. After inviting Charyung into his office, the doctor explained to him that no one had ever survived dragon venom poisoning. Yu-san, using modern medical technology, the only way to suppress the disease was with painkillers. The doctor confirmed his guess and said that there was a problem with the composition of these painkillers. The milk that monsters feed their pets was currently the only cure for this poison, especially for sky tigers, creatures of the 5th danger level. Charyung knew that this was a very rare raw material, but the problem was not only the money to acquire it. There were rumors among the hunters about a new potion, even a small dose of which could increase muscle strength and resistance for a long time. The ingredient of this remedy was also the milk of the heavenly tiger. The doctor said that previously it could be obtained for money, since it was not really used anywhere. But now the situation has changed. Entrepreneurs and hunters have been buying it up in large quantities. "It can't be," Charyung shouted irritably. "Is it really impossible to get a small dose to save just one person?" The doctor replied that that was exactly the problem. Yu-san needed, it was possible to make several dozen injections of the potion. The doctor explained that if a large number of people needed this medicine, the state would establish some regulations. But for the sake of one single patient in the whole world, all these people will not give up their profit. The hospital doctors, in turn, were going to try to do something, but they didn't have any special connections, and they didn't particularly believe in success. Charyung went outside and sat down on a bench in the hospital park. He needed to think about the current situation. The words about special connections gave him an idea. Charyung picked up the phone and dialed the number. Jinse-Ram was surprised to accept the call at such an hour. Charyung asked if he called too late, but the girl replied that it was okay. Charyung said that he might be willing to accept the proposal that Jinse-Ram made to him during their last meeting. The girl asked if he had any conditions. The conditions were there, but first everything had to be checked, although Jinse-Ram thought that everything would work out. Charyung asked whether she would be able to get what she needed or not, and the girl replied that she would be able to. Her father's company also produced this potion, especially since Charyung didn't need that much. Charyung was surprised, but he had no intention of telling Jinse-Ram about his feelings. She asked if he agreed, and they agreed to meet on Sunday. Jinse-Ram said that it was time to prepare for the exams. Preparation never hurt, so Charyung came to the Special Research Institute of Defense Industry of the Ginseng Group. The building's appearance impressed the guy. He heard Jinse-Ram call out to him, noticing that he had arrived early. The girl was standing next to the car. She asked if Charyung was feeling okay. He replied that he was so-so. The guy asked what they were going to do in this place. Jinse-Ram explained that they were going to measure his abilities. After the world began to change, people developed abilities that went beyond the laws of nature. Before the fusion, ordinary people had D rank abilities, excluding magic. When the indicators increased by 1 level and reached C rank, people were already called geniuses. And indicators above rank B already allowed us to talk about human superpowers. Jinse-Ram said that in addition to magical power, at least 5 indicators must be at least level C, then one can become a hunter. The girl herself had indicators C and B, except for magic, which was at a lower level. If 3 indicators are at least B rank, Charyung will be able to apply to the School of Heroes. The guy asked if he would have to undergo some kind of medical examination. Jinse-Ram replied that this is done in childhood, and after adolescence, the measurement becomes a little more difficult. Charyung clarified how much more difficult it was. Before the test began, Charyung had to wear a special suit with a helmet. He said he should have known when Jinse-Ram asked him how he felt. In front of Charyung stood a tall mechanical fighter, the golem Geochrone P. Ro. Charyong said that since he had already come here, he should fight properly because he himself was curious. He would like to know what his actual numbers are. Taking his weapon and taking a stance, the guy was ready for battle. Jia Kronpro's camera has captured the enemy. The mechanical fighter was about twice the height of a human. Jinsei Ram stood in front of screens that showed images from several cameras. The second girl, who was next to Jinsei Ram, said that the person being tested was acting confidently. Usually, everyone is afraid when they see a golem for the first time. The girl was a golem summoner and a former huntress. Her name was John Yo Min, and she asked if Charyong was going to transfer to hero school and assumed that he had prepared well. Jinsei Ram said that it is. John Yo Min announced the start of testing and launched the golem. The mechanical fighter came to life and began to move. Charyong was focused on the upcoming test. Measuring ability indicators is usually done at 6 or 7 years of age, with special devices being worn for detailed measurements. The devices stimulate the body, pushing it to the limit in various areas. The more unique abilities and the more trained a person is, the more difficult it is to make measurements. After all, it's difficult to stimulate them to the limit. Jinsei Ram suspected that her new acquaintance had the characteristics of a professional, and it would not be easy to discover his limits. Although due to yesterday's incident, his physical strength should already be at its limit, Se Ram thought. Jung Yo-min asked if it was true that this acquaintance, Se Ram, went to a regular high school and that he failed the exam and was unable to enter a specialized high school. Jun Yo-min asked this out of curiosity. She didn't understand how he could fail the test with such abilities. John Yo-min said that even though she lowered the difficulty level, it was still clear that Charyong had received professional training. At first, the guy dodged several times, reading the golem's tactics. Then Charyong waited for the right moment to deliver a precise blow. He was simply amazing. His performance was better than any professional. The test fight continued. Jinsei Ram asked what was happening with the dimension. John Yo-min replied that she found it difficult to answer here. Charyong hasn't reached his limit yet. John Yo-min has increased the difficulty level of the golem's program. Yo-min remarked that she didn't think there was much point in increasing the degree. She believed that normal results would only occur if she removed the safe mode and ran the golem at full power. Jung Yo-min reminded her, and Se Ram was indeed aware, that it was illegal for an ordinary person who was not a professional hunter to remove the safety mode. Jinsei Ram threw up her hands and asked how to test him then. After some thought, John Yo-min admitted that this was the first time she had encountered such a case, and there was only one way left. "I don't think you're being paid to puzzle over this," said someone who entered the room. The girls turned around at the sound of this voice. Zik Eskerm, Jinsei Ram's uncle and the director of the Jinsen Group's Research and Development Department, appeared at the lab and noticed that the lab was being used without permission today. John Yo-min didn't expect her boss to come because he usually didn't work on Sunday. Zik Eskerm asked whether the girls understood that they would be punished for their actions. Jinsei Ram turned to her uncle, assuring him that Yo-min had acted on her request. Zik Eskerm clarified what she meant by that. He asked the girl if she thought this excuse would help make amends for his subordinate's guilt. Zik Eskerm said that Jinsei Ram shouldn't deceive herself. This was her father's company, not her own. Jinsei Ram wasn't responsible for anything here. John Yo-min watched the conversation between her uncle and her niece and thought that the rumors about the boss were true. Even though Zak Eskerm was Se Ram's uncle, he had treated the girl very coldly since she was a child. In fact, she didn't do anything wrong. There's no one in the lab on weekends anyway. Other hunters in the Chinsen group also use the space for their own purposes. Zik Eskerm wanted to say something else, but a voice from the speakers interrupted his sentence. Charyong from the training hall wanted to find out what the problem was. Zik Eskerm asked who this guy was, maybe a classmate of his niece. The girls explained that it was just Jinsei Ram's friend. Jung Yo-min explained that Charyong wanted to become a hunter, but he failed the exam last year and lost his measurement. She reminded them that all of this was not cheap, and they simply wanted to help someone in a difficult situation. Zik Eskerm noticed the golem on the screen. "Okay," he said. The girls were amazed to hear that the boss was going to do everything himself. John Yo-min asked what he meant. Zik Eskerm said that measurements still couldn't be taken while the golem was in safe mode. He was going to come down himself and fight Charyong personally. Charyong asked if there was really a problem. This happens extremely rarely, but when it becomes difficult to measure the limits, competitions may be held between hunters. The scale above the entrance to the hall lit up. In the case of a competition, the opponent had to have skills that exceeded the abilities of the one measuring the indicators by several levels. Zeke Esram entered the hall and said that this was unexpected, but they could skip the presentation of the participants. He clarified that he didn't have much time. Charyung looked at him in surprise. He wanted to know who this elf in a white shirt was. Charyung had no idea who his opponent was. The boy felt danger when the stranger said that Charyung himself had roughly figured out what was going on, and now he himself would do everything possible to replace the golem. Charyung saw that this elf was much stronger than the hunter he had recently fought in the dungeon. The guy had never seen anyone like Zeke Esram before, and he knew in advance that he wouldn't be able to defeat him. "Attack," Charyung heard. "You don't have to worry about my safety," Zeke Esram added, despite not wearing any protective gear. Charyung took up arms. Power enveloped his figure. Charyung attacked the motionless enemy. If there is no right moment to strike, you have to make it appear. Zeke Esram was not only the director of the Research and Development Department of the Jinsen Group and Siram's uncle, but also a white hunter ranked 7th in South Korea. If a hunter is in the top 100, he is called a ranker and is assigned a color that depends on his place in the ranking. White is the highest and rarest. It is assigned to the holders of the first 10 places. Those who took places from 11 to 30th were entitled to black. Places from 31st to 50th belonged to green. From 51st place to 75th were called blue rank, and the last 25 and 100 wore red. Charyung's strategy in fighting such an opponent was simple. He would strike with all his might, and the only thing he could do was dodge. When the enemy dodged, Charyung used the moment of hesitation to attack. Zeke Esram easily put up a magical shield against Charyung. Charyung didn't expect to encounter such a defensive move. Elf said that Charyung was much more inattentive than he thought. Zeke Esram intercepted the spear aimed at him with his bare hand. He kicked his opponent without using the weapon he had taken from Charyung. Charyung felt the power of this blow. Zeke Esram threw the guy away. Charyung fell down and grabbed the injured area with his hand, trying to catch his breath. Zeke Esram said he couldn't figure out if this wasn't a real fight, if Charyung was going to take every hit, or if he just really thought the move would work. The elf noticed that Charyung looked pathetic in both cases. He tossed the spear with the toe of his boot. Esram said that Charyung didn't even lose consciousness, but had already dropped all his weapons. Charyung looked at him with a complicated expression. The elf threw the spear into his hands with force. He noted that for someone who makes such stupid mistakes, 2 times would be enough. Esram stated that if Charyung did something so stupid again, he would send him home, because it would be better for Charyung himself to give up his dream of becoming a hunter forever. Charyung noted that his opponent had some kind of inexplicable dislike for him personally. It didn't matter, so he went on the attack again. Esram saw that the guy was approaching just as quickly as last time. Most likely he was going to use the same technique. Charyung suddenly stopped. Esram concentrated on what was happening. The space between the opponents was quite large. Keeping your distance was standard practice. But this distance was clearly not enough. This was just a warm-up. Charyung's hand gripped the shaft of the spear tightly. The spearhead sparkled with power. Zeke Esram's face turned serious. Streams of power lashed between the opponents throughout the hall. Zeke Esram said it was done well. The elf attacked Charyung. The girls watched what was happening on the screens, and Jeon Yo-min was surprised. She clearly saw a battle between 2 professionals. Yo-min asked excitedly if this guy really couldn't get into any university, and Jin Se-ram just laughed in response. Jeon Yo-min said that if we talk about shortcomings, Charyung's technique has them. Jin Se-ram asked in amazement what the shortcomings were. Ye-min glanced at her and said that she was talking about a rather devastating flaw. The girl claimed that in this area Se-ram was far superior to her friend. Jin Se-ram could not believe that Charyung was weaker than her in any way. Charyung fought on equal terms with her uncle. What could this flaw of his be, the girl wondered, watching the unusual duel. Zeke Esram launched another punch. Charyung barely dodged it. Charyung looked at the hand that almost hit him. Jeon Yo-min let out an inarticulate cry of excitement. The leading role in the duel was intercepted. Charyung's face took on a furious expression. The fight continued, and Charyung was clearly losing. Zeke Esserm noted approvingly that this time his opponent did not let go of his weapon. And he added that this is how it should be. The elf's fist pierced Charyung's chest. This blow threw the guy back many steps. Jeonyo Min said that the boss really wasn't joking, although he certainly controlled his strength. Jinsi Ram just stared at the screen. Zeke Esserm said that he was not going to comment on Charyung's defeat since it was predetermined from the start. The elf said the process leading to this defeat was pathetic. Zeke Esserm said that this guy had no basic skills, and that was very surprising. Jeonyo Min said the same thing while watching the match. Jinsi Ram asked what basic knowledge was being discussed. Jeonyo Min explained that her friend's fighting sense and skills were simply excellent, but the basic points such as attack and defense methods made it clear that this fighter had no prior training at all. Yeomin herself was disappointed. With such a level of ability, Charyung could have been much stronger if he had received basic training. Jinsi Ram remembered that the boy had already told her that no one had ever taught him. Zeke Esserm said that he had seen many people like Charyung. He was referring to the pathetic guys who had unique abilities but didn't put in the slightest effort to develop them. Jinsi Ram listened to this with great excitement. This was not what she was aiming for when she invited her new acquaintance here. Esserm said that now Charyung needs to pay for the measurement. He thought it would be better to admit his hopelessness. The elf believed that only lazy people rely only on their own abilities. Charyung removed and discarded his broken helmet and rose to his feet. He said that he didn't know why his interlocutor allowed himself to use such a tone and such words. He assumed that the elf didn't like guys like him. Zeke Esserm thought his final blow should have ended this battle. Charyung continued his speech. He didn't care about some kind of measurement payment, he wanted to fight again. Charyung believed that he still had something to show for his efforts. Jeonyo Min asked out loud what was going on. "Look," said the girl, "the desire to go to the end is good, but the data has already been obtained. There is no longer any need to fight." Jinsei Ram turned to Yu Charyung, telling him that he was doing well and that the measurements were finished. Charyung heard that he could return and wait for the results. Esserm said that he didn't know what the guy was trying to achieve, but it was all useless. The result wouldn't change no matter how much they fought. The elf asked if Charyung really needed recognition. It was necessary for him to tell him himself that his efforts were quite sufficient and that he had amazing willpower. Charyung stated that he didn't really need it. He straightened up and explained that he was just really angry that it was all over and he hadn't even gotten a proper hit. Yu Charyung really wasn't taught by anyone. He did everything on his own from the very beginning. But he had one reason to continue the fight, which now seemed pointless. He had outstanding abilities since childhood. Thanks to this, he was able to fill the gaps in his education. He also had a lot of experience, having risked his life in the dungeons many times. He allowed his craft to develop. These achievements were like a miracle, but Charyung did not consider himself outstanding. He simply looked with pity at the hunters he had met so far. His opponent today was completely different. Zeke Esserm agreed to continue the fight. Now he was going to trample this guy before he even had time to get angry. Charyung saw that such an opponent was a monster capable of surpassing himself. Charyung could look at this elf with excitement. Besides his own father, this was the first time he had met a real hunter. He himself did not notice how youthful blood began to play within him. Jeonyo Min said that it was all too much to handle, and she didn't understand why her boss was acting like that. Jinsei Ram noted that the fighting stance Charyung was adopting now was unlike any she had seen before. The way the weapon was gripped and the body's center of gravity were clearly not suited for swinging a spear. It was as if a completely different person was standing in the training room. Charyung exhaled heavily before launching another attack. He moved decisively and quickly towards the enemy. It was a swift movement, filled with power. Zeke Esserm watched what was happening in silence. Jeonyo Min was shocked by what she saw. Charyung's movements were different from how he fought before. Esserm dodged the enemy's attacks with lightning speed. Jinsi Ram saw that compared to the first part of the test, the techniques now were simple and clumsy. Yeomin said that there was not the slightest hesitation in Yu Charyung's continuous movements. She didn't know who this guy was trained by, but he was trained properly. Yu Charyung put everything he had into this attack. He saw his father in front of him, young and strong. When he was training with weapons in the garden, little Charyung would pick up a broom and imitate Yu Sung's movements. Zeke Esserm continued to fight unarmed. Charyong received the blows from his hands on the shaft of his spear. As a child, he had to use a broom for training. Now he had weapons and power. Zeke Esserm's eyes lit up. One day, his father noticed how little Charyong was imitating his fighting movements. The fight continued, with the opponents using blinding power. Charyong imagined Yusung's face. He dodged Zeke Esserm's fist. He recalled how his father had then extended his hand to him. Little Charyong looked at him, very worried. He didn't know what his father would say or do. The adult Charyong fought calmly. The father then stroked the boy on the head. He looked at him for a long time. In the training hall of the research center, the opponents once again flew apart over a great distance. When the elf lands, there will be a hitch. Now it was simply impossible to dodge attacks. Therefore, we will have to do what the enemy wants. This is a blow that Charyong will have to face head-on. The girls watched the fight, mesmerized at the screens. The time has come for the final blow. After it was thrown, Zeke Esserm said that they should have kept it up and Charyong could have won. If only I hadn't started using those clumsy pole techniques again. Elf asked if Charyong wanted to boost his self-esteem. Lying on the floor, Charyong replied that he didn't intend to. He simply reached his limit. All the movements he had ever learned ended there. In the end, Charyong was defeated and now lay beaten on the floor of the training hall. But he still felt that he enjoyed the fight. Zeke Esserm had a bad reputation among the hunters due to his difficult personality, so, worried about Charyong, Jinsei Ram ran into the hall. Jinsei Ram knew that no one dared to say anything against her uncle because of his excellent skills. Zeke Esserm extended his palm over his fallen opponent, power radiating from his hand. He used healing magic. Esserm told Jinsei Ram not to worry about Charyong. The elf assured him that everything would be fine. He had cured him and there would be no consequences. Zeke Esserm asked if his niece had told him that the boy's name was Yu Charyong. Esserm said he never thought he would meet Yu Sung's son in such a situation. Zeke Esserm was a white rank hunter, of which there were only 10 in the entire country, and was also the best healer in Korea. Esserm left the research center and heard that if he was already late, he could at least send a message. The man with glasses who said this added that then he would leave the car and go get a drink, and they would also be late for the briefing again. He looked at the elf and asked if he knew that every time they were late, everyone else thought it was his fault. Esserm replied that he had some things to do that took longer than he had expected. His interlocutor asked if Esserm had fought with some boy, because it seemed that he had not been faced with just one opponent. Suddenly, the man in glasses' eyes widened in surprise. Zeke Esserm looked at him questioningly. The man in glasses asked if he really saw a scratch on the elf's cheek. Esserm asked gloomily what else it could look like. His interlocutor couldn't believe it, because if this boy was preparing to enter university, he should be only 16 years old. Esserm replied that he was 17 years old and wanted to transfer to the School of Heroes this winter. The man with glasses remembered that there was a rule allowing transfers, but when he himself studied there, in 3 years there was no one who could pass the exam. Then he noticed that the boy would definitely do it, because he was still a minor, but he had already managed to scratch the face of Zeke Esserm himself. Young people are simply scary these days, he added. Zeke Esserm said that even though the guy wasn't on the same level as him, there was no difference with the person he was talking to. The man's name was Kang Gun Ho, and he was ranked 19th in South Korea and was also the leader of the Knicks, Korea's first cleanup squad. He stated that, naturally, his own level was higher than the expected indicators of the unknown applicant. Kang Gun Ho was 21 years old, had graduated from Hero High School 1 year and 7 months ago, and had no doubt in his abilities. Zeke Esserm remarked that this was the first time he had seen his friend's car. Had he really bought a new one again? Kang Gun Ho replied that it was the same one he ordered last time. He no longer spends money like before, and then he announced the purchase price, and it turned out to be quite impressive. At this time, Charyong was lying on the cot near the equipment rack. He just woke up and immediately sat up in his bed. All his wounds had completely disappeared, and he no longer felt any pain. He heard Jinsei Ram's voice asking if he was awake. The girl stood on the threshold with 2 steaming mugs in her hands, and asked what he was thinking. Did he really hope to win that fight? Charyong explained that it wasn't for the sake of winning, but that he had simply gotten angry and lost his temper when Esserm had started teasing him first. Seiram didn't believe that her uncle could tease Charyung. The guy was surprised that this elf turned out to be her uncle. Jinsaram confirmed that Zeke Esserm was indeed her maternal uncle. Charyung thought about it. He muttered that he now understood what was going on. The girl was surprised to hear the opinion that she had a very good relationship with her uncle, judging by how much Zeke Esserm valued her. The girl asked what Charyung was talking about, but he stated that everything was exactly as he said. To Esserm, it might have looked like some weirdo had appeared and was trying to deceive his niece, and it was entirely understandable that he was worried. Jinsi Ram objected that her uncle was not like that. He was very strict. Charyung did not argue with her. Jeon Yo-min peeked through the door and asked how Charyung was feeling. The guy said that he was fine and that nothing hurt. Yo-min said with a smile that even if something had hurt, it would probably have healed by now. She said that her boss was the best healer in Korea, which greatly surprised Charyung. The guy thought that the elf was such a strong fighter, but it turned out that this was not even his main specialization. Charyung smiled at this new information. Jeon Yo-min said that it was good that everything was fine, and Charyung's results were also clear. She presented a plate on which most of the indicators were A or B rank, and only the magical power was equal to D rank. Charyung asked if this was considered a good result. Jeon Yo-min laughed, curious if this man was really an applicant. Jin Suram thought his performance was excellent and wanted her new friend to know his limits. The requirement to become a hunter was a B rank or higher. B meant superpowers, C was excellent, D was normal, but harmony was essential in the stats. Even if agility is at a high level, but it does not correspond to health, it does not give the desired result. If only muscles are developed, they alone will not be able to pull other abilities along with them. Jinsi Ram said that among ordinary people, there are those who can reach level C in one of the indicators, but everything changes when there are 2 or more such values. Muscle strength, health, and agility were the most important. People who had all of these indicators at C rank numbered 1 in 10,000 and were capable of fighting alone, while those who had 3 indicators at B rank numbered only 1 in 500,000 and they could become top-class hunters. Charyung had 2 B ranks, 2 A ranks, and no matter how balanced it was still a crazy level. Among the first-year students of the cleaning faculty, he was on the same level as that monster. Jung Yo-min asked if Charyung wanted to know something funny. The girl said with a smile that her boss, who fought with Charyung, did not have any of the A-rank indicators out of the 3. Charyung looked up from his tablet in surprise, and Jeon Yo-min explained that the stats were innate abilities and did not reflect current skills. If a person has an A score but does not train and grow, then there will be no difference with D, and other factors also matter. It was important whether the technique he was mastering suited the person. Moreover, sensations and experience could not be measured using indicators. Jinsi Ram listened attentively to her friend. Looking at Seiram, Jung Yo-min added that there are many hunters who are constantly making up for their gaps in performance through their efforts. Hearing this, Jinsi Ram blushed. Charyung put the tablet down and thanked him for such kind words. He said he wasn't too disappointed because he didn't understand all this. Charyung said that he has one friend, compared to whom he himself lacks a lot. Jeon Yo-min looked at him with disbelief. Since it was not often that one met such people, she assumed that this acquaintance of Charyung was very famous. Charyung confirmed that it was true. He was thinking about his father. Jinsi Ram summed it up. The measurement was complete. Charyung was a good boy. Now they can meet next weekend. Yeomin was surprised that the girl was already leaving. After all, she hadn't been to the center for a long time. Didn't she really want to look into the production department? Jinsi Ram admitted that she didn't have any acquaintances there like Yo-min, and her uncle was unlikely to allow it. Jeon Yo-min reported that he had just given permission. Jinsi Ram was shocked, but Jung Yo-min explained that the boss himself said so just before leaving. Zeke Esserm told me to take Charyung to the production department when he woke up. The head of the department can be told that this is Esserm's guest. The elf ordered Charyung to pick up a weapon there, no matter how much it cost, and this decision left Jinsei Ram shocked. It was every hunter's dream to have highly effective weapons and armor. For a hunter, it was not enough to simply possess outstanding abilities. The poor quality of the weapons did not provide any support to their owner. The hunter's skills could grow and change over time. Good weapons were necessary to apply these skills. Charyung himself understood this. The guy asked if he really needed a weapon since he was going to enter the school. Jinsei Ram was surprised because she thought it was natural. Charyong was sure that the school would provide everything necessary. He asked the girl if this was not the case. Both interlocutors looked at him with amazement. Jinsei Ram asked if Charyong really wanted to transfer to hero school. The girl said that he would be right if it were a simple school for ordinary hunters. Each such school provides equipment that meets established standards so that there is no discrimination between students. Charyong asked if things were really different at the hero school. He didn't understand why the school that had the most money needed this. Jeon Yo-min explained that the problem wasn't money, but that this school itself was different from all the other schools. There is a significant difference in skills and abilities, the girl said, and preparing good equipment is also an ability. Yo-min said that at the hero school, students prepare all weapons and equipment themselves. Charyong clarified that regardless of skills, those born into a wealthy family are in the most advantageous position, and if wealth is considered another ability, he has nothing to say at all. Jeon Yo-min looked down and noted that this was a point worth considering. She said that even without money, there is a way to acquire a good weapon. Those who are likely to become the best hunters in the future are admitted to the School of Heroes. Jeon Yo-min said there will be those who are willing to invest in students' abilities. If a student succeeds in getting into the school, they begin to receive various offers from companies and simply wealthy individuals, and after completing their studies, such hunters pay part of their fees to investors or sign a contract and become an advertising face. Students are sponsored under different conditions. Yo-min herself received a scholarship from the Chinsun group, so even after retirement, she is guaranteed a research position. Jeon Yo-min thought that entering hero school would be beneficial. The School of Heroes provides many opportunities to evaluate your abilities. But first, it was necessary to enroll in this school. The level of difficulty of testing when transferring from another school is much higher than a regular entrance exam. Each applicant does everything possible, including preparing equipment. Zika Sherm said that he would help Charyong with these preparations. Jeon Yo-min assured her that her boss had already made arrangements for everything, and now she only needed to go down to the underground workshop. The girl said that she would root for her new friend and hope that he would be accepted. As Charyong and Jinsei Ram walked to the elevator, the guy said that something terrible had happened and reminded her that the girl didn't seem to know about her uncle's help. Charyong realized that everyone who wanted to transfer to this school would come very well prepared. Se Ram said that she also wanted to help him and pay for the weapons. Charyong suddenly covered his face with his hands, and Jinsei Ram asked what kind of reaction that was. The girl thought that everything turned out very well, because no matter how much money you spend, it's very important who you trust with the production. The production department of Chinsun Group is of quite high quality, which has received recognition all over the world. The friends took the elevator down to the production floor. Charyong said that for that kind of money, the equipment would be roughly the same everywhere. When the elevator doors opened, Charyong froze in amazement. The underground forge of the Chinsun Group Research Center was astounding. The name of this dungeon before the cleansing sounded like the boiling abyss. Jinsei Ram smiled at her companion and asked him how he liked it. Money alone was not enough to use this place. Charyong looked at him, absolutely amazed by what he saw. The friends didn't immediately notice that someone was watching them too. This creature had a single glowing eye. Charyong noticed the new character and turned sharply towards him. "Zeke," the creature growled, "how dare he wake me up on the weekend?" The monster in the white coat came out to his friends and asked why Zeke himself didn't want to go down. Charyong thought it was a dungeon monster. Jinsei Ram quickly blocked the guy's path, spreading her arms, and explained that he was the head of the production department. The monster confirmed that this was true. He was a department head and also a monster. For people he was both. His name was Argus Thunderhammer, the senior titan, and he had once received citizenship of the Republic of Korea through a simplified procedure. Titan lit a huge cigar and asked who exactly Zeke was talking to him about. Then he pointed at Charyong and asked if he was talking about the little boy standing there, or if he was talking about Zeke's niece. Jinsei Ram recalled that a video with the readings was supposed to be sent from above. Argus grumbled that he knew nothing about human toys, neither about data nor about videos. The department's employees dealt with this, but they wished him a good weekend and went home. Jinsei Ram was visibly upset, but Argus said it didn't matter. Titan reasoned that since Zeke had ordered him to personally make a weapon for Chaoryong, he could check for himself who he was dealing with. He asked Chaoryong if the spear was his main weapon. "Fine," said Argus, "try to catch me, kid." Jinsei Rom asked what he meant. Titan stated that he did not know how this was done among people, but in his tribe it was a common procedure, because for the sake of a warrior whom he had not personally checked, he would not work and make weapons. Argus felt that Chaoryong was a little different from ordinary young boys. Titan noticed the look in his eyes as if he was familiar with hunting. He had the feeling that the guy was already trained, and now he had to demonstrate his skills. "Wow," Chaoryong said, looking at Argus. "Hey you," Jinsei Rom called out to him. Chaoryong said that it was time to find out that he does not refuse such offers. Argus looked at Chaoryong, still holding the cigar in his mouth. Chaoryong also didn't look away. The fight began quickly and with bright flashes of power. Jinsei Rom watched the fight with her hands over her mouth. The unsmoked cigar fell to the floor. "It can't be," said the Titan. Chaoryong's spear was pressed against his chin, and Argus asked where he got such a weapon. Chaoryong didn't expect this either. He definitely landed a blow. It was a clean move using the eagle technique. Of course, there were many monsters that he couldn't take down with one blow. But just now, he literally felt a wall. Chaoryong didn't know about endurance, but it felt like this creature wasn't alive. Argus loomed over his opponent, his eye glowing in the darkness. What kind of monster is this? Thought Chaoryong. Sei Ram was at a loss for another reason. She called her friend a fool who actually went to fight a high titan. The danger level of monsters was indicated by stars. The flying mantis had a level of 1 star, which meant that such a monster could kill a person. An average adult male with a weapon in his hands could handle a single level monster. The cluster raptors were 2 stars in level. Only trained soldiers with firearms in their hands can deal with such a monster. The immature titan ape specimen had a danger level of 3 stars. To defeat such a monster, motorized infantry and the introduction of armored weapons were required. Democuris had a 4-star level. In order to avoid numerous human casualties when this monster appeared, it was necessary to evacuate residents, avoiding any clashes with it. After evacuation, aerial or long-range bombardment is required. The maximum the military can do is eliminate a monster with a 4-star threat level. At levels of 5 stars and above, modern military forces are practically powerless. Even if the battle were won, they would have to expend a huge amount of firepower, and the destruction would be too great. Therefore, there are those who are able to defeat the monster with minimal losses for themselves. This is the elite hunter squad. The Elder Titan's threat level was 7, but Argus Thunderhammer interrupted the duel to ask where Chaoryong got the weapon. Jinsei Ram looked at Argus in terrible excitement. Chaoryong asked the Titan if one of the blows had been painful, since he was so interested in his weapon. Argus extended his hand and said that the man had better answer his question immediately. He explained that he made this weapon himself. Argus stamped his foot, shaking the entire floor, and repeated his question. He wanted to know why his weapon was not in the hands of its owner, but in the hands of Chaoryong. Jinsei Ram nervously bit her nails and thought that if this weapon was made by Argus himself, then it must be at least A rank. All the data on it should be in the association database. The owner of such a weapon is monitored very strictly. It could not have fallen into the hands of a smuggler by honest means. Jinsei Ram wondered if Chaoryong had stolen it or taken it away. Chaoryong replied that he didn't want to talk and thought it was none of Argus's business. Jinsei Ram screamed that she better tell him. "Do as you wish," said Argus, raising his hand to strike. At that moment, the thought of death flashed through Chaoryong's mind. It will be impossible to dodge this hand. You will have to take this blow. Chaoryong considered using Needle, but decided against it since his opponent had no obvious weak points. The swell technique was also useless, because Chaoryong would not be able to use the enemy's strength. Once he was hit by such a powerful blow, it would be the end for him. There was a third option left. There was also one last technique that Chaoryong spied on and adopted from his father. It was this that the guy decided to use now. Argus was amazed by this technique of Chaoryong. The law of force operated equally in all situations. In a head-on collision, the one who is bigger and stronger wins. Chaoryong decided to use a non-head-on collision. All that was needed was to calculate the angle and position for the strike. Even if he doesn't win, he'll at least be able to dodge it. This was Chaoryong's third weapon. Jin Se-ran couldn't believe her eyes. Charyung had managed to dodge the 7th level monster's attack. Now Charyung saw a weak spot where he could strike. All that remains is to pierce the Titan's only eye with the needle. The guy attacked the enemy according to his plan, but ended up in a strange device, similar to a vice, which he had instead of one hand. Argus had the man in this vice. Charyung was in very severe pain. Jin Se-ran screamed for the Titan to stop. She admitted that her friend looked suspicious, which was why Argus acted that way towards him. The girl said that the Titan still has no right to attack a person without finding out his circumstances. Se-ran reminded that those who receive citizenship through a special procedure do not have the right to harm people unless their lives are in danger. The girl said that if Argus broke this rule, he would lose all his civil rights and return to the ranks of monsters. Argus let Charyung go and told Jin Se-ran not to worry. He understood that very well. Se-ran rushed to Charyung's side to make sure he was okay. He wasn't hurt, but he felt pretty bruised. Titan asked again why his weapon was in this guy's possession. Argus wondered if that was why Zeke had woken him up on his day off. Argus apologized to Charyung and admitted that he had the right to the weapon. Titan said he would give the guy a good reward. Argus looked at the mark left by Charyung's successful strike and said that it had been about 30 years since he had last received any injuries. Jin Se-ran asked what the Titan was talking about, what right he meant. Argus asked the girl if she knew why he worked for people. Jin Se-ran suggested that the Special Hunter Squad had raided the Titan 30 years ago, but Argus countered that that was not the case. He asked if this was how people told this story to each other, since in reality their swords had not even touched him. Argus was defeated by a single man. Titan said that this man cut off his hand and could have even killed him, but did not do so. Charyung looked closely at Argus's face. "Yes, kid," said the Titan, lighting his cigar again. He remembered that battle, which he went into in full armor. He had power and weapons then. The man who stood in his way, armed with an axe, was Yu Seon, Yu Charyung's father. The Elder Titan is the one who has reached the highest level among the entire tribe of giants. His life was close to eternity. The number of such creatures was extremely small. No more than 10 Elder Titans were known on Earth. Even in terms of physical parameters, they have a considerable level. But their real strength lies in their ability to make powerful weapons and equipment. The innate talents of this tribe allowed them to create artifacts that contained special powers. Only Elder Titans and dwarves can boast of having such skills. But the dwarves are friendly to humans and coexist peacefully with them. The Elder Titans do not perceive humans as beings worthy of communication. It happened 30 years ago, the operation to capture Argus. Colossus B was an Argesian automaton with an estimated 4-star rating. Oh Seung-ah, a rifleman with the 9th Special Forces team, waited in vain for communication with headquarters to be restored. Her assistant, Kim Young-mo, said that the communication magic wasn't working, as if someone was deliberately creating interference. Park Jong-man, their captain and tank, shouted that the monster was approaching and everyone should prepare for impact. Colossus B moved towards them, armed with a sword and shield. Park Young-man exerted all his special powers. Oh Seung-ah was carried away by the power of this battle. She attacked the Colossus decisively. She managed to fly up to the level of Colossus's face to try and damage him. Oh Seung-ah's gaze became completely empty from surprise and fear. It was as if many swords were aimed at her. With such force, the Colossus repelled the blows aimed at him and destroyed the enemy. Kim Young-mo was trembling with fear. In this dungeon, his squad was confronted with a sight they had not expected to see. They were the Special Forces, a top-notch organization that could boast of its achievements in clearing the dungeons of its time. However, they failed to overcome the hell that was happening in the dungeon of Argus. This was the 7th Colossus their team had encountered. Kai Young-mo thought that it was necessary to run as far as possible. Even if they eventually defeated this Colossus, the next ones could appear from somewhere at any moment. If other teams were in the same situation, Kim Young-mo could at least try to leave himself. This is what their captain said. He also understood that they all would not survive. The Colossus went on the attack again. Kim Young-mo turned towards this enemy. The captain used the potential trigger technique, which activated all of the power without leaving any traces, and allowed the effect to last longer than usual. Once the skill expires, the user loses the ability to even move. Park Young-man used a shield strike against the Colossus. Kim Young-mo shouted that if the captain used the potential trigger, it would be suicide. Park Young-man said that not everyone would survive, and that he would not be able to defeat the Colossus on his own. But it was possible to try to stall for time so that Kim Young-mo could escape. Park Young-man smiled and said that who knows, maybe he will win. He didn't expect to see what happened next. "What is this?" asked both Special Forces fighters. The Titan appeared and asked if there were any bugs left that he hadn't removed yet. At that moment, they realized that they had no chance of survival. "Run!" Park Young-man shouted as loudly as he could. The captain was going to use his last chance. He thought that if he used all his strength now, he could at least buy a little time. The Titan swept him away with one blow, his sword sending up a wave of flame around him. Park Young-man was burned in this flame. "What nonsense?" asked the Titan. He didn't believe that people called such trash equipment, that's all, and the human body itself was of low quality. Titan could not believe that such creatures proclaimed themselves masters of this world. Earth seemed like a pitiful place to him. Kim Young-mo did not leave, but tried to attack the enemy with his spear. Titan said that in this man he sees at least loyalty and moral duty. This impressed him, albeit only a little. Kim Young-mo thought that he couldn't do anything. Even the commander couldn't cope with this monster, and his magic was certainly not enough. "I told you that you shouldn't come here so thoughtlessly," said another warrior who joined them. It was Yu-song. He said that it was much safer to gather information little by little and then go inside with a combined force, since there was no point in them attacking such a monster first. Kim Young-mo didn't know this man, and was shocked by his appearance and appearance. Yu-song was naked to the waist. Yu-song identified himself as one of the volunteers who received a call for help. He was sent here by the Hunters Association. At that time, Yu-song was 32 years old. Kim Young-mo was still looking at the stranger with surprise, and catching his gaze, Yu-song explained that it was uncomfortable for him to run in the armor. The new one turned out to be heavier than he thought, so he took it off. It was hard to believe that this man came to fight the Titan all alone. Yu-song said that no one else could get down here except him. After these words, Yu-song stood in front of the Colossus. The dungeon where the battle took place looked like a ceremonial hall with columns and high arches. How strong, thought Kim Young-mo, looking at his unexpected ally. Yu-song said that there was only chaos up there, and then asked how many more monsters were there. Until this moment, Yu-song was an unknown hunter that few people knew about. He was one of the first generation of hunters. His name was bound to slip out somewhere. But instead of fame and achievements, he paid more attention to saving others, so he did not immediately achieve fame. However, after this incident, everything changed. Yu-song was able to prove himself in that battle as a fighter of incredible power. He easily defeated the first Colossus single-handedly,